Welcome everyone to another episode of BizzTalk Africa, and I am so grateful today to have a wonderful guest, Frederick Muia. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
That is very correct.
Awesome, and really excited to have Frederick here today. And he's a co-founder of the Jobs for Africa Foundation. I'm Jason Schuster, our host, representative of BizTech. I'm a partner at BizTech, and with me is my wonderful co-host, Vidya Mike, who is the co-founder of Questa Solutions and also a partner at BizTech. And today we're going to have a really awesome conversation about jobs for Africa, which is a very hot topic. And Frederick is really is an expert in this field, obviously, with being the founder of Jobs for Africa. So anyways, getting started, Frederick, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your organization, and just kind of give the audience an understanding of where your perspective comes from.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Frederick Muia. I'm originally from Kenya, but I've spent more than 20 years in Switzerland working on employment, labor, and social policy issues. I was for 18 years the director for Africa, or the person responsible for Africa, the International Organization of Employers. This is the organization that brings together national business federations from all over the world. And I was the key contact person for business federations in Africa. So how did the idea of the Jobs for Africa come about? Just to give you a bit of background. It was way back in 2012, 2013, when I met my other co-founder, Jamal Belash, who was at that time the head of Manpower. And you know, Manpower is a multinational that is very active in the area of employment. And so we were discussing at the international level employment issues. And it came at a time when everyone was talking about the African growth story. As a matter of fact, McKinsey Global Institute actually published a document called Lions on the Move, the potential African economies. Everyone was saying 6 of the world's fastest growing economies are in Africa. So you had investors, everybody looking, oh, if I want to make money, Africa is the place to go. But the question was, why we had so much optimism about African economies, and at the same time you were seeing a lot of desperation. When you look back, you remember the Lampedusa tragedy, where close to 300, I think 350 Africans, young Africans, died as they tried to look for opportunities in Europe. So the question was, why was this growth at the same time not creating opportunities for young people? Just on average, 18 million young people enter the job market every year in Africa, but only 3 million jobs are created in what we call the formal economy, because you have a lot of informality in Africa. The question is, what happens to those 15 million? And they are the ones you see in very disparate situations, trying to cross the Sahara Desert, others recruited by jihadist groups like the Boko Haram in Nigeria, because somebody comes, offers, you know, livelihood, and they think, well, this is what I need to do. So we are saying, and this is the introduction that you put, youth unemployment is not just an economic or social issue, it has become a national security issue. And what we've been saying to governments is that if you do not take care of the needs of the youth in Africa, and you look at the demographics, a very young continent, the median age in Africa is 19 years. Imagine. In Sweden, in countries like Sweden, it's about 42 years. So there are a lot of things that need to be done to take care of the youth. And our approach has been to say the youth need employment, of course, jobs, but they also need skills, because you need to make sure that the education and training that is being provided to them matches what the labor market is looking for, what companies are looking for. Because you do get companies saying, look, we have opportunities, but we cannot find the skills we need. So you have to address the mismatch. And the other approach that we use is entrepreneurship. You know, how can you create your own job? And it's about planting the seed of entrepreneurship early enough in school, so that youth can say, you know, I don't need to be employed by anybody. I can create my own job. At one time in Burkina Faso, was a debate organized by Radio France International, and I was talking to the Minister of Labor, and he said, you know, in Burkina Faso, we train agricultural engineers, but we say we are an agricultural country, but our engineers just go and sit at home waiting for somebody to employ them. Why don't we instill in them the spirit of entrepreneurship? I can create my own job. So this is also about changing the mindsets of the youth in Africa. And just before I end, I just wanted to talk about two aspects, and these were captured by the McKinsey publication later on. They actually did another one after having a discussion with me. They said, look, we understand we've hyped up, you know, this African growth story, but there's something that we are not addressing, and that's the unemployment situation. So they did another publication, which our viewers can look and see. It's called Africa at Work, Job Creation and Inclusive Growth. And the key word here is inclusive growth. We need growth because people don't eat numbers. You tell youth that our economy is growing at 10% per annum, they say, yeah, but where are the jobs? And this is why at Jobs for Africa, we are focusing on what we call job-rich sectors. Agriculture is one of them, because 70% of Africans still depend on agriculture. Africa has 65% or more of the world's remaining arable land, but this is a continent that is still a net importer of food, spending close to, and these are the figures by the African Development Bank, $35 billion per year to import food. So again, a dichotomy, a contrast. So there are a lot of things that need to be done, and just so that we don't make it a monologue, I just wanted to stop there with my introduction.
No, I appreciate it, Frederick. Wow, you throw a lot of stuff at us, and I have a lot of questions already. and knowing Vidya, I know that Vidi has quite a few questions already too. Yeah. So I think that the first thing that stood out to me, that the median age 19, that is just wild. I mean, that really means that Africa is a young continent.
Yeah, 19 medium age out of a population of 1.37 billion. Just imagine.
But you know, it's just really interesting, which means that, yeah, Africa's focus as far as infrastructure and the kind of jobs that we're looking at, it's going to look a little different than it will in other countries. So that's really interesting. The other thing that stood out to me is you know, just kind of your approach and the different sectors that you're focusing on. You mentioned agriculture. What other sectors are you looking at are a big focus? And then I'm going to let Biddy ask her 50 questions, because I know she's got them.
Yeah, the other sector that we looked at, and that is actually showing a lot of potential, is the ICT or the digital economy. And we've seen with the youthful population, youth tend to be very tech savvy. You've seen that. And it's not for nothing that some countries in Africa have made innovations that have made them, trendsetters in the world. When you look at mobile money transfer, for example, in Kenya, became the leader of the world. So these are certain areas because youth, want to embrace technology. That Africa, has a lot going for it, and you've got a lot of tech hubs that are coming up. South Africa, you have Ghana, you have Kenya, you have Egypt. So here is an area where there's a lot of potential. Of course, it's difficult getting finance, but we are seeing trends that startup capital is becoming more and more available for the young people.
That's those are two big good topics as well. But how are you actually working with the government in terms of, making them more aware, but also having a cohesive plan? Because this is not just one thing, isn't it? It has to be a series of things working together to help, exponentially move where we are to where we need to be.
Yeah. Okay. The question with regard to governments, when I was doing my introduction, I did say that jobs cannot be created by decree. Governments waking up and saying, "Let jobs be created," or "Let there be jobs." Jobs are created by the private sector. And our approach has always been, first of all, advocacy. And when we said that we wanted to tell governments that you need to make youth unemployment as a national security issue, meaning that whatever governments are doing, if they are discussing a huge infrastructural project with maybe a Chinese funder, because that is a trend nowadays, say, how much am I
of
going
local
to
labor are you going to use?
Yes. It's governments. If they make youth unemployment as a priority number one, then when they're discussing this huge project, they need to ask the question, how much? And that's why you hear a lot of governments now increasingly talking about local content. They want to make sure that youth or women-owned companies can tender, get offers to be able to contribute.
Absolutely. And what about from our educational perspective? Like, how are they sort of enabling young people to get the relevant education they need so that, like you mentioned, ICT, you still need to have, some sort of formal education, introduction, some way to actually get into it. Are they very supportive of this as well?
Yeah, they are. And actually, in 2019, Jobs for Africa Foundation was very privileged to get an invitation from the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki, because he came up with an initiative called 1 million by 2021. And this initiative was basically to say, and I'm sure the corona virus has really altered those plans, but the focus still remains the same. So by the end of 2021, we need, and that's why it's called 1 million, we need to make sure that we have youth engaged in, first of all, and this goes right back to your question, in education, because education is a prerequisite to acquiring other skills.
It's a key, right?
Yeah,
it unlocks the whole thing.
It is definite. And for us, as Jobs for Africa Foundation, we went even further to say, because of the world that we live in, let us also focus on what we call STEM subjects. And you know that.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Well, if
Yeah.
you had one message for our viewers who's listening to this and looking at this and thinking, well, how could we participate? What would you say to them?
I think we, as Jobs for Africa Foundation, have come up with what we call a national action plan, because we believe that we cannot address this alone. And as Jason was saying, it's got a lot of facets. You know, governments have to play their role. So advocacy is very critical, making sure that you have the right environment for enterprises to be created and developed. That's one, and that goes down to infrastructure, goes down to the fact that you know, a lot of in a lot of countries, why do people go into the informal economy? Because it might take you, let's say, 3 months before you get a license to operate your business. And that's why we are encouraging governments to set up what is called a one-stop shop, where you get all the licenses within maybe 2 days. And because of, we believe ICT, and that's why I'm coming back to it, is an enabler. Because when you digitalize everything, then it means, you know, you don't have to move from one office to the other, you know, to get this license and that kind of thing. So that makes it much easier. And people feel that instead of going, you know, operating in the informal economy, I can have my business registered, and then I can have all the facts if I want to acquire a loan, you want to speak to partners in a matchmaking, you know, discussion. I have all the right paperwork, because that has been a major problem. When you speak to angel investors who want to invest in Africa and they're talking to people, they don't have the right paperwork. So some of these things may look like, you know, simple, but they're very critical for Africans to be able to raise capital, to be able to engage with partners and that sort of thing. So ours is like a movement, and I'm going back to your question. Join us in doing advocacy, join us in training the youth, and there are a lot of things that we want to do virtually. Going back to the question about the work we are doing with the African Union, we insist a lot on soft skills, because that's also important, critical thinking and that kind of thing, because that is how you be able to get a job. And there's a lot we can do by joining hands in this movement.
Absolutely. So you have on your a list of people in your database that work with you right now? Young
Yes,
people?
we do, yeah.
Okay. Well, I will start today with you. I need 2 interims.
Yeah.
So send me 2 profiles.
Yeah.
Who wants to learn, and I will look after them for 3 months and give them you know, an opportunity. Let's see what they could do. So from me personally, I like what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to join hands, and I would advocate this.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you so much. So for anything else, at least I'll go away saying I've managed to get a place for 2 interns.
Interns.
Wonderful,
Yep.
wonderful.
And it doesn't matter their skill set, because I will train them.
Okay.
What I need is 3 things.
Yeah.
Keen to learn, right? Happy to think out of the box.
Yeah.
And they're ready to make mistakes.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Make mistakes. That's a big one. I think that our youth today, and this is not just for Africa, but just youth today, I think are terrified of making mistakes. But it's actually, if you're making mistakes, that means you're doing something, and that's how we learn, right?
Absolutely.
And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, you know, early in my career was fail fast, fail often, and learn. You know, learn from that failure. It's okay. It's okay to fail. So, you know, it's what's not okay is analysis paralysis. It's constantly planning and getting ready and getting ready and getting ready and never moving forward. So
I'm worrying, right?
What's that?
And worrying.
Yeah.
I mean, people are
And
so,
worrying. Oh my
you know,
goodness.
young people today, everything is written out for them. It's like a recipe. This is what you have to follow. But actually having the freedom to let your mind think
Yeah.
and be prepared for what the outcome is going to look like. It's fascinating. So Frederick,
No,
I
it
really
is.
enjoy this topic, and
Yeah.
I love what you guys are doing, because there's so many economies with exactly the same issue. It is a society problem, and
Yeah.
having a group like Jobs for Africa that's actually analyzing what these issues are, but
Yeah.
also not afraid to deal with it from a government perspective or any sort of society perspective, working with the private sector, try and bridge that gap
Yeah.
to sort of help young people. Because if you don't do that, we will never fix the problem. The problem in 6 years
Yeah.
actually exists right now. Fundamentally, if you don't fix it now, 6 years time, you wouldn't solve that problem. No amount of
That is very true.
investment, no amount of, catalyst programs will actually do that, because it's a systemic problem and
Yeah.
you've got to repair it now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually talking about interns. Last week, I was talking to a Swiss NGO that normally brings young people from Africa to Switzerland to give them that, first of all, the first job opportunity, because it's always very difficult for young people. They have never been in a work setting before. And so when they go for interviews, they are completely lost. So giving them that first opportunity as an intern really enables them to acquire, certain skills, but also to be confident.
Yes.
So this Swiss NGO approached the Jobs for Africa Foundation to say to us, look, during this COVID period, it's very difficult to bring them all the way from Namibia to Switzerland. We have to do it virtually. So we, as Jobs for Africa Foundation, accepted, to take in one intern, and we are starting next week. So we can say that we have, with yours, 3 interns that we've been able to place.
Fabulous.
So wonderful, yeah.
Absolutely. So, Frederick, I have another question for you, and this is maybe slightly curveball, but would you say, when I've had a lot of these conversations since we started this show, and problems facing Africa, infrastructure is one of the things that keeps coming up, and this is where we need change here. Another one that's come up though, and that from my perspective, outside looking in, seems like it would be an obvious bottleneck, is connectivity.
Yeah.
Have you found that connectivity, right, access to internet or let's just say or mobile data, but the ability to really be connected, is that a hindrance for the job market for young people in Africa? Or are you seeing that that's actually, it's more of an excuse, which I don't know, which from your perspective, you're in this, is it a problem or is it not a problem?
I can say it is still a problem
Okay.
because I was actually invited to a meeting by the International Labour Organization and UNICEF. We are part of an initiative called Decent Jobs for Youth. And this, we were discussing the impact of COVID-19 on young people. And first of all, it was focusing on education. And when there were lockdowns in Africa, schools were closed. And the government said, make sure that you organize classes virtually. Can you imagine? Not very many young people could afford. That's a big problem, getting mobile data to be able to connect and follow classes. Other young people living in the countryside, there is no internet at all. In fact, during that meeting, one gentleman from South Africa said, let's make access to the internet a basic human right, a fundamental human right for young people. Why? Because in this age, I mean, internet has become so important. It's so essential. I mean, without access to it, you're going to be completely left behind. So it's a major problem. I said it is still a problem because there has been quite some progress in terms of investments in internet. For example, the undersea cables, some of them governmental, others private. Facebook has also been contributing, and so, but it's still a problem, especially in the countryside. And as I said at the beginning, although Africa is urbanizing quite fast, you still have quite a substantial number of people living in the countryside where infrastructure is even a bigger problem than in the cities.
Absolutely. And you said earlier that 65% of the world's, farmable land essentially is in Africa. So I imagine there's quite a few people living in the country who need this access. So I mean, I definitely see that, while here in the United States, we're excited about things like 5G so that we can have a little bit faster Netflix response, right? For places like Africa, it's like this could be the game changer, right? Really getting high-speed internet to everybody.
Transform lives completely.
I mean, these programs are going to have huge impacts in Africa.
Wow.
And this is one of the reasons we started to do these programs as well, Frederick, because we have a real slant to technology and business and stuff like that. But what we found is that we wanted to sort of bring to the forefront things that are going on in Africa, what the opportunities are, but also to educate people to understand, like, fundamentally where the gaps are, what's needed, and people like you helping sort of bring and educate others about what the opportunities are, what is required, what help is needed, and I think, like, everybody working together could help solve and eradicate these issues.
Definitely. As I said, ICT is really an enabler in so many respects. When I talked about agriculture, for example, I have a company in Kenya that has identified some of these gaps. People living in the countryside do not have access to the information in terms of the market. So they've set up a platform where they bring together the retailers in the cities of fruits and vegetables and the farmers. So all they need to do, the farmers, and a lot of people now have access to a mobile phone. So the farmers just contact the company to say, my fruits and vegetables are ready. And so the company just goes to have people harvest the produce, take it to a go down, repackage it well, and then take it to the retailers in the cities. So the retailers just have to order through their mobile phone.
Nice.
I need this, and then it is working. ICT, becoming an enabler, and so people who would never have had any access to that market are able to do it because of that.
And this is where good change starts to happen.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Wow. This has been fantastic, Frederick.
Absolutely.
And I know we got started a few minutes late, so I know we're kind of past our scheduled time, but I wanted to give just a few more minutes so we can make up that time. Any other closing remarks? I imagine that this is a subject that we could talk about again. And I have felt this, actually, most of our guests, I feel like there's more here, right? We need to have another session. So I'd love to look at having another session here in the future, because I think this is just such an important topic. It's a hot topic. We can talk more about it. There's a lot that can be done. But maybe, could you take maybe 2 or 3 more minutes just to kind of give some closing thoughts? Like, what else do you want to really leave the audience with regarding this topic, and what can be done?
I think I'll go back to the introduction that I made, which is was very optimistic about, the international community discovering Africa in a different and positive light. McKinsey publication, Lions on the Move, African Economies, you can figure that out. Waking up in the savannah and trying to catch up with the Asian tigers. So that was their image. And that is still the case today. There's a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of opportunities in Africa. Africa needs investors. The return to investment in Africa is return on investment is among the highest in the world. Of course, the risks. Everyone talks about the risks, but it's more of a perception rather than reality. And so when you talk about 65% of the world's remaining arable land, and the world needs food, Africa is the place to go if you're an investor in the agricultural sector. And that is the sector where you're going to make a lot of impact, because the people in Africa, the growing population, I talked about 1.37 billion people. That population is going to be 2.5 billion in the year 2050. So you can imagine how many mouths there will be to feed. At the same time, we have to look after the youth, because there's an expression, if you don't take care of the youth will take care of you. And so that's what politicians have been told. And you need to address the unemployment challenges, give the youth the skills they need, provide them with the requisite support, if it is access to finance, access to skills, training, invest in infrastructure, like the internet we were talking about, because you don't have to go to the cities to be able, to scan your document. It should be able to be done everywhere where you are. So you put all these things together, and it's a movement. And thank you again, Vidai, for that offer that you made to take in interns from Jobs for Africa Foundation.
That's
so
the
let's
follow-up
create
session.
a movement. Yes.
We will give feedback.
And it's this movement that is going to make a difference. As they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And let's, make one step towards addressing the youth unemployment challenge in Africa.
Exactly.
Wonderful, wonderful. Frederick, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on here. Really looking forward to future sessions and working with you in other ways. And as always, Vidya, thank you for being such a wonderful
pleasure.
co-host. Yeah. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much. We appreciate all of you. We're going to keep doing BizzTalk Africa, because it's just so interesting and there's so much going on, and I love it. I really do. I love these sessions. They're fantastic.
And
so again, Frederick.
We're making a difference. We are making a difference in every way.
I really do. It's in our it's what we can do. So Frederick, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you again. And until next time. Thanks so much.
Until next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.